The following is a presentation of the Eagles Sports Network.
All right. I mean, as far as, this week's concerned with Newberry, it's a game that, I think that all of us kind of look forward to. In a sense, this is another opportunity to go play a good opponent, to kind of figure out, exactly, how much growth and development we've kind of had over the season. They'll be like you talked about earlier, they'll be the third nationally ranked opponent we've played. And so, but it's good. It's good to be able to play good people, and especially early in the season, to figure out where you're at, to continue to iron out some of the things that you need to iron out. I guess we're in the middle of the season now, to iron out what you need to iron out. And so, our big thing is to continue to get better, and hopefully we see some of that growth again this week, and hopefully result in a win.
No Carson-Newman football team has had to face three nationally ranked teams in a 5-week span. What has this done so far for your team?
I think overall, when we go back and look at it, I think it has the potential to really sharpen us, to help us grow. I think that's like after we come back and, look at last week's game yesterday, the question I asked guys, do we think it's a situation where it's a winnable game for us? And the answer was yes. And so then the next thing you have to do is go figure out, okay, well, what do we have to do to win it? And, and the thing that happens is the two things that sticks out are consistency. We did some things well, but we got to do things well consistently. And then I think, the things that we talk about, we have to put into action. And so when you get put in these situations where you talk about, that's the story of this group right now is, everything's been a little bit different for them, but to be tested, I think we'll go into, the back end of the season a little bit battle tested. That's one thing we used to always do as coaches. You want to play good people and then kind of give yourself the chance to gain some traction on the back end, and hopefully that's what we're doing right now.
Still a lot to play for because of the format change. You go unbeaten in the division. One, you've got a division championship potentially, but you're also playing for the conference championship. How helpful is that format given the start?
It's good to know, even where you're at right now, there's still something out there to continue to fight for. And, you fight now for later, and then you have to fight later for later as well. But I think it's something that, that provides a lot of encouragement. The biggest thing that we have to do is continue to grow and continue to, find the consistency. And I hate to keep saying eliminate mistakes, but, learn from it and move forward from the mistakes that we've already made.
Is it nice, though, last week, the talk was, got to wrap up, got to tackle better. Did that.
They did it.
Adjustment. How nice is it that they've been putting those teaching moments into practice?
I think it's good. It's good for them, and it's good when it shows up on film. Even offensively, talk to Brian Doe. There's a block 2 weeks ago to where, he winds up hitting the inside hip of a guy. He gets a pretty good defensive lineman on him this week, and he winds up getting all the way across. They kind of get that block. And so now it's kind of showing up on film, some of the things that we're coaching, we're capable of doing, but it's the consistency part. Can we go do it every single play for 4 quarters and being consistent about it?
The 1980s reunion, quite literally 79 through 93. A lot of folks back for this one, organized by Mark Isom and Lamar Brown. How exciting is it to have so many who did so much for this program back on campus this weekend?
I think that's where it's cool. When I looked at the list the other day, I think there was 80 guys that signed up, and that's where we just talked to Ken Burton, guy that, helps us in Florida recruiting. He won't be able to make it because of the storms, but that group of guys, they're really the reason I come to Carson. When you go in, I remember Coach Sparksy coming in and watching the highlight tapes, and every Saturday, it's one of those things we want to go win championship like those guys did. So Coach Whitley had this big TV down in the locker room right there, and we would watch the 80s championship games and the 80s highlights. So it's almost like a lot of those guys I feel like I know because we were so engrossed in what they did here. And it's just such an honor to have them on campus this week, man. We're just looking forward to being able to spend a little bit of time with them and love on them some.
Newberry, you think them, you think Dre Harris. all-conference caliber quarterback. What's he do to operate their offense?
Dre's just a really phenomenal athlete. Good with his arm, good with his legs, good from a leadership standpoint. I think the other thing that helps is, man, he still has a good cast of running backs and receivers around him. Newberry is always a super talented football team. Someone that always presented challenges for us.
Defensively, they have posed as much of a problem as anybody over the last decade. They're top 5 in the country in run defense. What's it take to move the football against a pretty stout unit?
I think we've got to be creative. I think we've got to do a good job of continuing to get better at some of the things that we've done. I think schematically, we've got to be a little bit more consistent on what we've done there, and make sure that we can execute the way that we need to execute. I think the big thing that sticks out on them is when you go look at their 2 deep. I mean, they're all guys that's been there forever and been playing there forever. So, the experience is kind of showing up for them.
You talk about being there forever. That's certainly true. Their offense, we already mentioned Harris. Mario Anderson, running back, Woodruff, receiver. Those feel like guys that have literally been there for 3 presidencies. But how does that experience show up on tape in games?
The biggest thing you see is we always talk about communication. The great thing that you get to is when your communication is something that doesn't even have to be nonverbal, that you've kind of done something long enough, you understand one enough well enough that hey, I see a guy press, me and that quarterback, we ain't got to talk about it. We know, we're going to go fade, or we're going to run a slant route on that. And so that's one of the things I think that shows up on film. It's just a lot of their stuff, they've done it together so long that it's become automatic for them.
You alluded to it earlier. This is the halfway point, more or less. What surprised you about this team, good or bad, at this juncture of the season?
I think they've been pretty, on course. I think from the very first week when we go to West Georgia, the thing I think we left the first meeting, going into that game as coaches was these guys are different. These guys will work. They'll give themselves a chance. And, when the scoreboard doesn't come out your way, it can kind of be frustrating. But there was still a sense of focus, in the room yesterday. And so, it's always, for us as coaches, sometimes that, focus to where guys are locked in and it seems like things may be a little bit dull, and then nervous energy. To where guys are just kind of giddy about getting done what needs to get done. They don't really know. But I thought yesterday in our meeting, I sensed a little bit of just kind of that zero in focus to where guys are all right, it's time. Let's take this next step. And so I think it's something that we have to continue to challenge ourselves with. But I think we've got a good football team still, and I think we still need to continue to press to get done what we need to get done.
Anything else?
That's all I have.